India. So, in the contemporary international system is as it is undergoing profound transformations, shifting geopolitical alignments, emerging power centers, technological advancements, economic interdependence, and evolving security challenges are reshaping the global order in unprecedented ways. So, as nations navigate these changes, questions surrounding India's strategic choices, foreign policy priorities, and role in the emerging world order have become increasingly significant. So, today's lecture series offers an important opportunity to engage with these pressing issues and gain deeper insights into India's options in a rapidly changing global landscape. So, before moving further, I would like to briefly highlight the role of Indian Research Scholars Association. So IRSA is a dynamic academic platform committed to promoting research, intellectual exchange, and scholarly engagement among students and researchers across disciplines. Through lecture series, workshops, and academic discussions, the association seeks to foster critical thinking, encourage interdisciplinary dialogue, and create meaningful opportunities for young scholars to interact with distinguished experts like we have on a platform today. So by nurturing a vibrant research culture, IRSA continues to contribute to the advancement of knowledge and academic excellence in India. So, with this spirit of scholarly engagement, I would like to invite Mr. Vikas Kumar, who is the president of Indian Research Scholars Association, for the welcome address. Over to you, Mr. Vikas.
Uh, Thank you, Manorma Madam, for giving me this opportunity. So I will not take more time because three scholars are here. So first of all, I would like to welcome and pranam to Professor Sri Prakash Mani Tripathi sir, Honorable former Vice Chancellor, IGNTU Amarkantak. Sir was my teacher and sir is my teacher now. So that time I was doing PhD in IGNTU Amarkantak. So sir was my teacher and still sir has given us contact number to Professor Annapurna Nautiyal madam. In 2022, I have attended one seminar, national seminar, which had been conducted by Professor Semwal sir. During that seminar, I had listened to ma'am. So, on behalf of the India Research Scholars Association and on behalf of myself, I would like to welcome to Professor Annapurna Nautiyal ma'am and also to Professor Srikant Kondapali sir. Sir is a professor in School of International Relation, and as I am teaching in Dayal Singh Union College, but I am doing doctorate from the Center for Political Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University. So I am a student of that institute where Sir is belongs. So. Uh, in this platform, I can see many professors and faculty members have joined from various institutions and various parts of the India. Professor Saroj Kumar Verma sir, Professor Indrajit Sodi sir has joined from the Jamia Millia Islamia. Professor Raj Yadav madam from GNU, and some professor have joined. I think Professor Bosade has joined from Johannesburg University, South Africa, and one scholar has joined from Central Asian countries. It is difficult to take the name or the faculty members. So, on behalf of the India Research Scholar Association, I would like to welcome all the participants and guests and organizing committee. So, thank you so much. And I would like to invite to Manorma for the further proceeding. Over to you, Manorma.
आज विकास सही सुनने को मिलेगा। जहाँ तक विषय की चर्चा है, बदलती हुई विश्व व्यवस्था की जटिलताएं और भारत के विकल्प, हम आप सभी जानते हैं कि आज दुनिया बहुत तेजी से बदल रही है। वो राजनीतिक दृष्टि से, आर्थिक दृष्टि से, रणनीतिक दृष्टि से, सांस्कृतिक दृष्टि से और सामाजिक दृष्टि से भी इतना त्वरित परिवर्तन होगा यह कभी हम लोगों ने सोचा नहीं था। अंतर्राष्ट्रीय संगठनों के सामने समस्या उठी। अब जो अंतर्राष्ट्रीय संगठन अंतर्राष्ट्रीय शांति और संप्रभु राष्ट्रों की राजनीतिक स्थिरता के कारक और कारण रहे हैं, उनकी महत्ता धीरे धीरे घटी है। अंतर्राष्ट्रीय संगठनों की महत्ता घटने से अंतर्राष्ट्रीय शांति और अंतर्राष्ट्रीय कानून के सम्मुख गंभीर संकट उत्पन्न हुए हैं। बहुत दिनों से अंतर्राष्ट्रीय संगठन की संरचना में सुधार की मांग चल रही थी। वह सुधार तो होना दूर, जो निर्णायक शक्तियां थी अंतर्राष्ट्रीय संगठन में, संयुक्त राष्ट्र में, उन्होंने ही इससे किनारा कस लिया। बहुत सारे मायनों में इसके नियमों को नहीं मानती। महत्वपूर्ण शक्तियां अब उदित हो रही हैं। महाशक्तियों का तिलस्म टूट रहा है। हम आप सभी ने देखा है कि खाड़ी संकट के दौर में अमेरिका किस तरह से लाचार दिखलाई दिया और उसने यह भी बता दिया कि अब कोई भी महाशक्ति अकेले किसी संप्रभु स्वाभिमानी राष्ट्र पर नियंत्रण नहीं कर सकता। अर्थात अगर उनके साथ कोई समूह ना जुटे तो महाशक्ति की निरर्थकता इस खाड़ी संकट ने उत्पन्न किया। जो बहुराष्ट्रीय संधियां हैं, उनके स्थान पर भी अब संधियों का नया दौर शुरू हो रहा है। महाशक्तियों का स्थान धीरे धीरे महत्वपूर्ण शक्तियां ले रही हैं। इसीलिए कभी बाइपोलैरिटी एक शब्द चलता था, द्विध्रुवीय दुनिया, बाद में मल्टीपोलैरिटी शब्द आया, बहुध्रुवीय दुनिया, और अब मल्टीपोलैरिटी शब्द है, बहुस्तंभी दुनिया, क्योंकि भू राजनीतिक दृष्टि से कभी दुनिया मल्टीपोलर हो ही नहीं सकती। जब भी होगी बाइपोलर होगी। अंतर्राष्ट्रीय राजनीति में अंतर्राष्ट्रीय शांति के लिए शब्द चलते थे, शक्ति संतुलन। शीत युद्ध के पश्चात और उसके अनंतर भी एक नया शब्द आया, बैलेंस ऑफ टेरर, नाभिकीय शस्त्रों के विकास के साथ, जिसे भय का संतुलन कहते हैं। अब यह कुछ भी मायने नहीं रखता। महाशक्तियों के निजी स्वार्थों के चलते बहुत सारे कार्य इस दुनिया में जो मानवता के लिए होने चाहिए थे, मानवाधिकार के लिए होने चाहिए थे, अब वह संहार के लिए होने लगे। पहले आयुध बनते थे रक्षा के लिए, अब आक्रमण ही उनका प्रमुख ध्येय हो गया है। संयुक्त राज्य अमेरिका की नीतियों से हम सभी संकट उत्पन्न हो गया है। एनजीओ, नॉन स्टेट एक्टर्स और डीप स्टेट जैसे शब्द फिर नए सिरे से परिभाषित होने लगे हैं। महासागर अब संचार के केंद्र नहीं रहे, निर्बाध आवागमन के साधन नहीं रहे, उस पर भी पहरे और उस पर भी हमले होने लगे। भारत का हित हिंद महासागर के साथ, इंडियन ओशन रिम के साथ राष्ट्रों के कल्याण के लिए, मानवता के लाभ के लिए था। अब अंतरराष्ट्रीय व्यापार हथियार बन गया और इस जिसे टैरिफ वार कहते हैं। एक बहुत बड़ी समस्या है। दो राष्ट्रों के बीच जो व्यापार होता है अब कैसे सुगम रूप से हो सकेगा, यह सब महत्वपूर्ण समस्याएं हैं, जटिलताएं हैं, जिस पर विचार होना है। खाड़ी संकट के चलते ऊर्जा की समस्या उत्पन्न हो गई। वैकल्पिक ऊर्जा के स्रोतों की तलाश अब तेजी से की जानी चाहिए और इस क्षेत्र में भारत ने बहुत ज़्यादा प्रगति की है। सोलर एनर्जी में, विंड एनर्जी में और बहुत सारे काम हो रहे हैं। आजकल हम लोग आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस की बात करते हैं। आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस की देन यह है कि जो हम हैं वो अब दिखलाई नहीं दे सकते, जो दिखाई देता है वो हमारी वास्तविकता नहीं है। अर्थात दुनिया घोर गड्ढमगड्ढ की स्थिति में पहुंच गई है और प्रत्येक राष्ट्र संशय के दौर में है। भारत के सामने जो विकल्प है जिस पर हमें विचार करना है वो बहुत सारे महत्वपूर्ण विकल्प हैं। एक तो अब महाशक्तियों के साथ जो कभी इक्वी डिस्टेंस, कभी इक्वी नियरनेस की हमारी पॉलिसी थी, अब उससे हटकर हमें अलग मैत्रीपूर्ण संबंध बनाने हैं। जैसे ईयू के साथ हमारे एग्रीमेंट, कुछ राष्ट्रों के साथ बाईलेटरल रिलेशंस, यह सब कुछ देखते हुए फिर पड़ोस में जो राष्ट्र हैं उनको ध्यान में रखते हुए भारत को अपना रास्ता तय करना है। विकास के लिए सबसे आवश्यक है ऊर्जा। ऊर्जा के लिए हमें कैसे कैसे विकल्प तलाशने हैं, वैकल्पिक ऊर्जा के स्रोत पर हमें आगे बढ़ना है, यह सब कार्य भारत को करना है। इसी के चलते फ्रांस, जर्मनी के साथ हमारे बेहतर संबंध, यूरोपीय यूनियन के साथ हमारे बेहतर संबंध और राष्ट्रों के साथ आप सभी रोज अखबार में पढ़ते होंगे, समाचार पत्रों में देखते होंगे। अब जो भू राजनीतिक और रणनीतिक स्थिति बदली है, इसमें युद्ध का स्वरूप भी बदल गया। कभी ट्रेडिशनल वारफेयर, कभी मॉडर्न वारफेयर, कभी इलेक्ट्रॉनिक वारफेयर, कभी साइकोलॉजिकल, कभी प्रोपेगेंडा वारफेयर, ये सारे नए नए शब्द अब अस्तित्व में आ गए। यथार्थ को समझने के लिए समर्थ और संपन्न होना जरूरी है। हम तेजी से आर्थिक महाशक्ति बन रहे हैं। अब हम स्ट्रेटेजिक दृष्टि से, सामरिक दृष्टि से, जिसे कहते हैं भारत की स्ट्रेटेजिक ऑटोनॉमी की पॉलिसी, अब हम आयुध के क्षेत्र में आत्मनिर्भर बन रहे हैं और यह बहुत ज़्यादा आवश्यक है। मिसाइल तकनीक में हिंदुस्तान का कोई जोड़ नहीं है, इसलिए सामरिक क्षेत्र में हिंदुस्तान की भूमिका अब महत्वपूर्ण हो गई है। हमारी बहुत सारी मिसाइलें हैं जिनका नामोल्लेख आवश्यक नहीं है, अब दुनिया के लिए आश्चर्य और आवश्यकता के विषय बन गए हैं। ऐसे में हिंदुस्तान, जो हमारी परंपरागत नीति रही है पंचशील की, उसका आश्रय लेते हुए सॉफ्ट पावर डिप्लोमेसी और हार्ड पावर डिप्लोमेसी दोनों में समन्वय करते हुए हिंदुस्तान को आगे बढ़ना है। और हम यह सिद्ध कर चुके हैं कि अब हम दुनिया के महत्वपूर्ण राष्ट्र हैं। अब हम केवल पॉलिसी फॉलो करने वाले नहीं हैं, अब हम पॉलिसी मेकर हैं। अंतर्राष्ट्रीय विधान का कोई ऐसा पक्ष नहीं होगा जिसमें हिंदुस्तान की उपेक्षा संभव है। हिंदुस्तान की उपस्थिति ही अंतर्राष्ट्रवाद को सार्थकता प्रदान करेगी। ऐसी स्थितियां बन गई हैं। अब हम लुकिस्ट से एक्टिस्ट, निकटस्थ पड़ोस से दूरस्थ पड़ोस जैसे तमाम कार्यक्रम अपने विदेश नीति में संचालित करते हैं। अब भारत की जो विदेश नीति है केवल क्षेत्रीय विदेश नीति नहीं है, स्थानीय राष्ट्रों के साथ जो हमारे समीपस्थ पड़ोसी हैं उन्हीं के संचालन के लिए नहीं है। अब हमारी जो विदेश नीति है इसे ग्लोबल पॉलिसी कहते हैं, वैश्विक राजनीति कहते हैं। और हिंदुस्तान अब दुनिया की नीयत बदलने की तरफ तेजी से अग्रसर है। अकादमिक संस्थानों से हम अब शोध के माध्यम से बहुत शीघ्र ज्ञान की दुनिया की महाशक्ति बनेंगे और दुनिया में शांति का संदेश दे सकेंगे। हम आप सभी को ध्यान रखना चाहिए कि जब 1998 में दूसरी बार परमाणु परीक्षण किया, जिसे द्वितीय पोखरण कहते हैं, तो उसका कैप्शन रखा गया था बुद्ध मुस्कुराए। उसका अर्थ यह था, हम सभी जानते हैं कि परमाणु तो विनाश का अस्त्र है। बुद्ध मुस्कुराए का अर्थ था कि अब हम समर्थ हैं, दुनिया को शांति की गारंटी दे सकते हैं और अपनी शांति की गारंटी अब तैयार कर चुके हैं। यह भारत की नीति है कि दुनिया में शांति हो, सद्भाव हो और समन्वय हो। हमारी विदेश नीति का प्रमुख अंश है, जैसा माननीय मोदी जी कहते हैं कि आज का दौर युद्ध का दौर नहीं है, सहयोग और समन्वय का दौर है। हर टकराव का समाधान शांत और समन्वय से होता है और इसका रास्ता अहिंसक ही हो सकता है और इस अहिंसा का संदेश भारत ने दुनिया को दिया है। हमारे बहुत सारे विकल्प हैं जिस पर मैंने कुछ की चर्चा की। विस्तार से परिचर्चा के लिए प्रोफेसर नौटियाल जी हैं, प्रोफेसर श्रीकांत जी हैं, तो हम लोग उनसे से सुनेंगे। आप सभी ने मुझे ध्यान से सुना, इसके लिए बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
Thank you so much, sir, for your insightful and thought-provoking remarks. And your observations have provided an excellent framework for understanding the significance of today's theme. So now moving on, I would like to welcome Professor Shrikant Kondapalli for introductory remarks, and who is also presiding over today's session as well. He's a professor at Center for East Asian Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. Professor Kondapalli is one of the India's foremost scholars of international relations, Asian geopolitics, and strategic affairs, whose contributions have significantly enriched academic and policy debates in the country. So, over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Manorama, and good evening to all of you and those who are coming from other regions. Greetings to all of you. It is indeed an honor to be presiding over this session of the Indian Research Scholars Association, the Central Zone Wing. And let me thank Dr. Vikash Kumar for this opportunity and greet Professor Tripathi and Professor Nautiyal and the other participants in this session today. So the session is on the intricacies of changing world order and what are the options for India. And Professor Tripathi has actually mentioned several of these already. So it is left for us to elaborate some of those points that were mentioned right now. So I would suggest that the February 28th this year, the strikes by United States and Israel on Iran created conditions for the changing world order. But we can also trace this to the October 7th and aftermath on Gaza, the strikes that led to thousands of killings. We also see that the Russia-Ukraine conflict has resulted in a lot of stalemate in Europe because NATO has financed the Ukrainian conflict against the Russians after Russia had taken over Donbass and other areas. So President Putin told President Xi Jinping that they would like to wind up the war in 3 days, but we are in the 5th year in Russia-Ukraine conflict. Likewise, Prime Minister Netanyahu mentioned that they will be winding up the war in a few days, but we are in the 4th year of the Israel-Palestine-Hamas conflict. We also see that the February 28th conflict continuing, even when there are so many plans were made, yet we see the skirmishes have been increasing intermittently, even before the agreements diversified from traditional into various aspects like psychological warfare. The Azerbaijan-Armenian war brought in the importance of drones in warfare, and today we see that the inflict damage on the GCC countries as well as on the American allies and of course Israel. So drone warfare is a new concept since the Azerbaijan-Armenian war some years ago. So this is one of the characteristics of the current warfare, which has influenced the global order to a large extent. And this means that every nation today needs to adapt to the new technologies meaning automation, space warfare. You have also the drone warfare, information warfare, the Iranian used Peto 3 navigation satellite imageries and information to pinpoint the accurate location of American military assets. So this provides the information warfare and space warfare as one of the features of the emerging world order. But we also have other changes that have been triggered by these 4 or 5 conflicts that I just mentioned. However, while most of these conflicts are continuing, like Russia-Ukraine war now nearing about 5 years, however, the Operation Sindoor was just about 88 hours. And the leadership in India consciously avoided escalation and consciously avoided long-term consequences of such conflict by initially suggesting that this is only retaliation for the terror attacks in Pahalgam. And so the leadership has been very conscious of the continuing of the warfare and the destruction that would ensure with the conflict. So while most of the conflicts have been long drawn, the Operation Sindoor last May has been discontinued in a way soon after the objectives were met in terms of those terror targets that were countered by the Indian armed forces. So this is one significant thing that is important. We need to consider this because strategic leaderships in Russia, Ukraine, Israel, United States, Iran, the GCC countries, and the Fifth Fleet in Bahrain and associated countries. The strategic leaderships in all these countries made miscalculation, while Indian leadership had shown the way on how to wind up the conflict in 88 hours, while the objectives have been met. Well, Marco Rubio also mentioned that the objectives of the Iran conflict have been met, yet there is the continuation of the warfare even today. So this is one major trend in the emerging world order. Number two, what we have seen is the fragmentation with the equilibrium among the major powers has been disturbed in recent times. As Professor Tripathi mentioned, there is the major powers today are scrambling across to fix the problems. So in other words, this equilibrium, once it is shattered, it has long-term consequences for the emergence of the old order. Professor Tripathi mentioned about the multipolarity that has emerged because of the unipolarity and bipolarity structures have come down over a period of time, but these conflicts also suggest that there is an emerging world order where there are more than one major power or more than 3 or 4 major powers, which we call as multipolar world order. But this multipolar world order is not very stable. This multipolar world order is transitory in nature. We do not know what is going to happen because this is in a flux as of now. Will China emerge? Will China, Russia, both of them emerge to counter the United States? There are some measures that they have undertaken, such as the SCO, such as BRICS Plus, and others, but these have not become very stable as of now. We have seen, for example, the foreign ministerial meeting of the BRICS 18th summit meeting that was held about 10 days ago. There was no consensus in that meeting, which suggests that the summit meeting itself may be a problematic, as the G20 was before in Bali and other G20 meetings in Delhi in Brazil and in South Africa. So what we see is the emerging multipolar world order is again a transitory. Whether this will result in some countries, some major powers coming together and asserting themselves, that is still not clear, because the old order itself is today not very stable. So this is one. As a result of this, there is a lot of fragmentation in globalization, in supply chain mechanisms. Professor Tripathi mentioned about the impact on economy. The IMF expects that this year we will have about 2.3% growth rate, which is very skewed in nature, which means if India is looking at 6 to 7% growth rate, and if the global economic growth rate is 2.3%, we need to really struggle a lot for exploring the markets, because the United States has imposed 50% tariffs on us. And so the market conditions are not very conducive for India's economic growth rate. So the options for India, as Professor Tripathi also mentioned, is to explore the EU FTA or the I2U2, the New Zealand, the Australian trade agreement, CEPA agreements with Japan, South Korea, or the ASEAN FTA. We need to be very agile. Recently, when Prime Minister Modi visited these 5 countries, Scandinavian, Italy, UAE, etc., the focus was on how to expand the economic growth rates. For instance, the IMEC project, India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor projects have come into discussion with the Italian Prime Minister. So this is one of the ways in expanding infrastructure, but most important, to increase the demand so that we can expand the supply of the goods and services. So this is possibly one of the options that we need to think about in terms of our own economic renewal in the depressing world order outcomes as we have witnessed in these conflicts. The other main trend is, of course, there are so many other countries which are also kind of worried, EU, NATO, because of the Russia-Ukraine conflict or others. But fundamentally for the global South countries, the energy supplies, food, fertilizer, and other commodities have become a major problematic with the current conflict situation. So the global South is now targeted with these price rises as a result of the conflict that we have seen. And as a result of this conflict, we also saw the currency depletion. For example, the Indian rupee has been depreciated quite a lot, more than 100 rupees now per dollar, while the energy prices have almost gone up to $122 per barrel. Historically, the energy prices were around $80 per barrel on an average for the last 2 centuries. But with the conflict, it has gone up to over $120 billion, $120 per barrel. So which suggests that there is some bad news coming in terms of the transportation, economic growth rates, and a host of them which are dependent on the energy prices. Finally, I would say that all of these have also resulted in technological disruptions. Professor Tripathi mentioned about the AI and others. Some of these disruptions are very useful, but there are others in the technological sphere which would also create problems in the emerging world order. So as a result, India is, in terms of options for India, India is looking at the semiconductor industry. So the Dholera project, the Micron company investment, the TSMC investment from Taiwan in the semiconductor industry, these are the ways that we could probably be enhancing our technological prowess. We saw, for example, in the Iran conflict, the internet has been blockaded. Iran also threatened to cut the submarine cables. So we are witnessing a lot of concerns about the data security and the other technological disruptions as part of the emerging world order. So this is not a very conducive situation for India, as with the other global South countries. And this is where we need to really put our heads down and explore more options. I mentioned a few, but one of the things that we could do is, given the US-India tensions, President Trump has insulted India in many ways by by criticizing Prime Minister Modi and others. So, in other words, we need to be focusing on self-help measures rather than exploring many other countries. So we need to maintain those 7% growth rates. That is a compulsory issue for us because of the kind of employment generation it will have. There is a study that for every 1% increase in GDP, we will have about nearly 40 million employment. So that is very crucial for social stability issues. And so it is necessary for us to focus on the GDP growth rate as well. Although that is not the only matrix economists suggest, but that is one where we need to emphasize on. Of course, we need to be in partnership with the like-minded countries. Specifically, European Union countries are increasingly getting charged up because of the differences in the NATO and with the United States. They're looking for a direction. And so there is space for us in the emerging world order in terms of unveiling leadership related matters. So there are many opportunities actually for India and for other countries in this cesspool of the emerging world order. So I would conclude by saying that we need to do more research on this aspect, and policy related options need to be further explored. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, sir, for your compelling introduction for today's session. And drawing upon your deep expertise and experience, you have provided valuable perspectives that will undoubtedly guide and inform the discussion that follow. Now moving on to the keynote lecture of the session, I would like to introduce our distinguished speaker, Professor Annapurna Nautiyal. She's a former Vice Chancellor of Hemwati Nandan Bahuguna Garhwal University, Uttarakhand. Professor Nautiyal, she's a distinguished academician, administrator, and scholar whose contributions to higher education and public discourse have earned widespread recognition. Her extensive experience and scholarly insights make her exceptionally well placed to address the complexities of the changing world order and India's strategic responses to contemporary global challenges. So over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much. How much time I'm given?
No time limitation, madam, for you.
Unlimited. That's fine.
Capacity.
That's fine with me. That's very fine. Professor Prakash Mani Tripathi ji, for his very valuable remarks, and Professor Shrikant Kondapalli ji for his very convincing and very assuring options and also scenario about the international intricacies of international order. Both of them provided many options which we need to explore. And actually, the suggestion by Professor Kondapalli that there should be certain policy recommendations which are required by the Government of India very urgently to traverse in this very difficult trajectory of international relations. I can see Dr. Saroj Verma also. So my regards to you, sir. And Dr. Vikas Kumar, thank you very much for inviting me, and to your Association of Research Scholars. I think it's a very very unique attempt by the research scholars to invite some scholar for delivering some kind of lecture and interacting with such scholars which you have invited, like Prakash Mani Tripathi ji, Kondakali ji, and Saroj Kumar Verma ji. So my best wishes to everyone and my regards to everyone. And before I start, I would like to say that my work has already been done by both of the earlier speakers. So I don't have to do much work now because options have been discussed, scenario have been discussed. So now what else I have to do? I don't have to do anything except saying that absolutely true things have been highlighted by these two scholars of about the international scenario, about the intricacies of changing world order, and about options for India, which are limited in my opinion. But India needs to traverse very, very intelligently, very diplomatically, and very strategically to achieve the maximum goals. Now, now you can see the atmosphere that how transactional all international relations and foreign policies have become under the present current scenario, and which is rapidly shifting. It's shifting from one goal to another, and it has confused everyone. We are searching for options that what should we say about this global order, about this world order. The power play, the rules of war and peace have changed. In peacetime also there is a war. In ceasefire also there is a war. And otherwise, the concept of swift war was there through the missiles, mines, speedboats, etc., etc. But it has also fallen flat because now it's required that you need to capture the territory again. The territorial concept of war is coming back, particularly in the case of Iran, because the Strait of Hormuz has been used as a weapon by Iran, and which is not opening, and it has increased the oil crisis throughout the world, and which has been indicated very clearly by Srikanji and also by Prakash Mani Tripathi ji. So the rules of interactions, authority, new concepts like regime change, although it was earlier also present but in a different form. So now the clear concept of regime change we can see, and the hunch of and the description of America, you can see everywhere. Like I read in an article that 1 out of 13 countries have faced American anger, and in some way or another way, America wants regime change. 1 out of 11 people have been targeted by the United States in some way or other way. 5 countries in Middle East are in, although peace negotiations are also going on. So such kind of stalemate is indicating different kind of a world order, which we have never seen earlier. 4 continents have been hit by the United States, like Asia, Africa, North and South America. And some states like Canada, Cuba, Colombia, Greenland, Mexico, Panama, and Oman have been warned by America that they can also be annexed with America. Like for Canada, the U.S. President Trump has always been saying that it's the 51st state of the United States of America, and the same has been said about Greenland, which he wants to capture by force, because he wants that there should not be any interference by China and the Russia. So that's how these things are moving in the global order. So all the rules are changing. Diplomatic rules are changing. In a recent article by Brahma Chelini, I read one very interesting word, that was diplomacy ambush, because he was talking about the manipulating tactics of President Trump, and by that the tendency to establish control is not through war exactly, but through deception or telling lies. And negotiation are just for deception, not for peace. And technological progress has seen the invent of drones, missiles, mines, speedboats. These are the new tools through which Iran is fighting the war, and the US is in a very bad condition, bad shape, and seeking to come out of the war unscathed, which seems impossible because today also no framework of agreement or said MOU has been signed by President Trump. So how far this war will go, uh, everyone has to see. So these things indicate sometimes unipolarity. We cannot just outrightly say that it's not unipolar because the way Trump wants to run the international politics, it's unipolar only. But sometimes we see bipolarity or multipolar polarity also when he says that the world order will be decided by G2. And this concept was promoted by him in the meeting of in South Korea, Busan, during his meeting with Xi Jinping. That G2 means America and China will decide the future course. Even Trump did not care about Russia because Russia is also, it's not a gone force, although it's in the war since long, as Professor Kundapalli highlighted, but it's not a gone force. It is the biggest nuclear power, I think. It has got very big arsenal of nuclear weapons. So we cannot just say Russia is not there. But still, President Trump talked about G2 means America and China. They can resolve the problems of the world through their meetings, through their actions, and through their meetings. Although there are countries like China, India, Russia, and middle powers also, and this concept was also highlighted by Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney in his address in Davos in January 26, where he said that the rule-based order is fading very fast, and for confronting the challenges, the middle powers had to act together because compliance will not buy security. So for security, they need to get together. From there, the concept of middle power is also gaining ground. So middle powers, regional blocs like BRICS, they are asserting their strategic autonomy. They also support multipolarity, and they also want to reduce their dependence on the West as well as the disruption in the supply chains, about which Professor Prakash Mani Tripathi and Kondapalli ji both talked, that the disruption in supply chains has created a very big hue and cry in the world. Like our finance minister has to appeal to all the Indians to not to to reduce their consumption of fuel, fertilizer, and forex, and save it for the country for future. Our Prime Minister also appealed before leaving for the tour for 5 countries that we need to save energy for the time of crisis. So this is the scenario where self-reliance is being promoted, Atmanirbharta, in every sector. So not only not only for war purpose, but for food, fuel, and technology. So it's a driving force besides FTA, free trade agreements, about which both of the speakers they highlighted very nicely, and also developing land and sea corridors for connectivity and supplies. This is also very important. So these things will also provide help to rearrange the arranged world order. Although US is still a superpower, still there is no doubt about that, but every act of every state is guided by its national interest, and that is supported by foreign policy. Because if we go back to the thinkers like Chanakya, like Machiavelli, like Montesquieu, Morgenthau, they all supported build-up of sufficient military, economic, and diplomatic power, sphere of influence to ensure national interest, territorial autonomy, sovereignty, and stability. Why? Because today's wars are being fought for territorial gains as well as for resources. Why President Bush abducted Venezuelan president because of the oil, because it has the biggest storage of oil. So he was abducted, and Venezuela is now under the U.S. directions. So this is how the foreign policy, or this is how the international scenario is working. So I'll say that while all of us are figuring out whether unipolarity, multipolarity, or multi-layered multipolarity is guiding the order, there is confusion and chaos about the role, rule, regime, and rights. And this is why, because of unwarranted US policies, and that has made this order directionless. Nobody has any direction to which direction this world order is going. It's going towards chaos, it's going towards eruptions, it's going towards disruptions. So it's a kind of uncharted course through which all of us are traveling. So presently, I will also like to say, although Professor Kondapalli is an expert on China, I should not say more about China, but without talking about China, it can never be complete. China is being placed at the center of global affairs, diplomacy, economic influence, and strategic negotiations. And this opportunity has been given to China, like the back-to-back visit by President Trump and President Putin to China during May, underlined not only growing stature of Chinese President Xi Jinping, but also expanding ability to shape global conversations and offering strategic alternatives during crisis due to increasing diplomatic clout, as well as economic power, technological power, and all the powers combined. It makes China now a very commanding force in world order. So Cold War is perhaps not possible. It can be said that it's an obsolete concept now. But Trump has already indicated that now the world order will be decided by G2. So from that period, China has been seeing itself not as a subordinate to US, but as an equal, and negotiating from a position of strength or power or parity. This has boosted strategic confidence of China. So what China is doing? Trump imposed triple-digit tariff on China, but China did not bother at all. And China neither stopped Russian oil purchases, not succumbed to US pressures, but it has got a very good weapon, that is rare earth materials. So it constrained the rare earth exports, and which contributed to a global slowdown. And tariff has also emboldened China to act as an equal to the US. And so much so, during President Trump's visit to China, Xi Jinping indirectly hinted US that the risk of confrontation between a rising power and an established power is imminent if American red lines over Taiwan or over South China Sea are crossed. So this shows that China is growing like anything. China is growing, and China is not bothering about anything, and it has the capacity to stare at Trump's eyes and tell him that what has to be done and what is not admissible or what cannot be done. So this is how things are working. In SCO summit also, where three leaders, Prime Minister Modi, Putin, and Xi Jinping met, Trump did not feel very good about it, because Trump thought that India is also colliding with the authoritarian regimes. And colliding with authoritarian regimes, according to a democratic state, is not good. But it's a question of national interest. So if national interests are supporting the meeting with these two leaders, India can do that. That is called strategic autonomy of India, to choose friends, and to choose the path which India has to take in its further growth. So, despite disproving India's relations, Trump did not hesitate to host Putin in Alaska, although as it is, it concluded without any positive outcome because Russia was not agreed to withdraw from Ukraine war or stop Ukraine war without achieving its goals. So, but Trump can very smartly said that I have no idea about it. I don't know. And there are foolish people in every state, in every country. So in America also foolish people are there, and in India also. Sufficient power. They have more nuclear weapons, limitless partnerships, and growing aggression and influence. US seems very comfortable with them. So US is patronizing the authoritarian regimes, not India. This is the contradiction which needs to be noted and which needs to be highlighted whenever there are talks, and India should be very forthright that these things should be avoided while talking to India. And Trump has also adopted a policy of selective isolation. Whenever he feels that he has no role to play or he don't want to risk anything, he says that we are isolating. Like from Ukraine war, Trump has isolated because Ukraine war is not proving very fruitful for Russia also. And he even suggested the Ukrainian president that Russia is very big, therefore the victory will be theirs. Means they should not fight the war and they should stop the war, but they are fighting the war despite Trump's warning. So this is a kind of treatment which the US needs to be given by all the countries, or pushback. That is the policy which is required more forcefully to push back whatever the US dictates. So this shows that every country has a need to protect its national interest and strategic autonomy. So if India seeks the same rights, it should not be objected. Like I would just remind you that when Putin visited India in December 2025, there was a joint article by the ambassadors of three countries, Germany, UK, and France, about Putin's visit and criticizing his role in Ukraine war. And that was seen by India as an unusual and unacceptable diplomatic practice. So it is India's autonomy to invite anyone, and nobody is there, nobody should dictate whom to invite and whom not to invite. So this is also a very interesting aspect of the changing world order, where one power thinks that that power can guide every country and all the countries should fall in line. So another angle is that despite sanctions, despite warrant issued against the name of Putin visited Alaska, US, and US and Europe, they did not stop the oil purchase from Russia. On the other hand, they were accusing India that India is fueling the war machine of Russia by purchasing Russian oil. And 25% retaliatory tariffs were imposed on India. So it shows a kind of double standard of the US, which have been witnessed time to time from 1945, 1947 onwards. It's a blow hot, blow cold kind of a relationship between US and India. And this relationship, like today, I was just listening to Hexet's speech. In India, nothing was said about strengthening the Indo-Pacific partnership, but Hexet clearly said that the monopolistic attitudes and hegemony will not be tolerated in Indo-Pacific, which is a very important area for US. So what was stopping Rubio to accept in India that India is an important country of Indo-Pacific region, and India should be, and America can rely on India for that security which is being sought now. So sometimes that's why I say that it's blow hot and blow cold. Wherever you are pleased, you can be very warm, but if you are not pleased, you are cold to India. So this kind of behavior is unacceptable to India, and India's actions also show that India will not like this kind of attitude. Now, like the abduction of Venezuelan president, suppose if other countries also start doing it, what will happen to the global order? This has given an opportunity to other countries seeking this kind of opportunity, like Russia, who has been fighting a war with Ukraine, like China, who is very keen on annexing Taiwan. So if this opportunity is given to these countries, will they stop? So who is going to stop them? If a superpower is not doing the act accordingly, who will stop them? So with this, Trump has also introduced a new doctrine in the name of, which was earlier present for isolation, in the name of Monroe Doctrine. Now it's Donroe Doctrine in his name. So this Donroe Doctrine is applicable as per the conditions, as per the national interest, and as per the situation. And it is actually a camouflage of American practices, American influences, and American policy priorities. So the thought after it that we want to protect our sphere of influence, we want to limit migration, we want to limit the drugs, is just a camouflage. It's nothing else. So this Donroe Doctrine is also not very good. Otherwise, why Trump wants to capture every country, like Greenland from Denmark? Why it is being done? Because Denmark is not willing to give Greenland to America, and even the Greenlanders have raised the slogan, "Make America go away, make America go away." Like "Make America Great Again," it's "Make America Go Away." So Trump has been doing various things, like he has renamed the Department of Defense to Department of War. So it shows the tendency that how crazy he is for a war. And every time he threatens of waging a war if the wishes are not fulfilled. And renaming the institutions which have already been named with the permission of Congress, like the Kennedy Center of Art. And today only, yesterday only, a judge said that Trump has no power to change the name of Kennedy Center of Art because Congress had approved it, and the Congress has the only right to change it. So it can never be Donald J. Trump Center of Arts. And similarly, the United Institute of Peace has been renamed as United Institute, Donald J. Trump United Institute of Peace. He is doing crazy things like construction of ballroom or mounting of walls of White House with gold and inscribing mistakes beneath every president. So it shows it remorse, resetting, and replacing anything which he dislikes. And he is doing same thing with the countries whom he dislikes. So only sycophants are closer to him. The countries who order, global order in the Middle East, or like in the Afghanistan, Libya, Iraq, in the past also failed, and this time also it is going to fail. So this is providing opportunity, as I said, that to the countries like China and Russia to do more, and even China has been threatening India because India shares a boundary with China, and this is also a very long boundary. And China claims too many places in Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, and even Arunachal Pradesh, including Tawang, and which it knows as the name of Southern Tibet. And Aksai Chin in Northeast, and has renamed 27 territories or locations and recognizes them as Jangam. In eastern Ladakh, Galwan Valley, Pangong Lake, Depsang Plains, Damchok are main friction points. And Bhutan's area also it claims. So this is how China works. And China also is opposed to Malabar naval exercises, and particularly Quad, because China sees that it's again an attempt to ganging up against China. So it does not like Quad also. And China often uses threats and aggressive tactics. Therefore, US actions might provoke China to annex Taiwan and snatch all disputed lands by force in South China Sea. Because of its steadiness. We have seen what President Putin did in 1971 war when the triangular diplomacy of China, Pakistan, and US was disturbing Indian interests. So Russia was standing like a rock. So India's time-tested friendship with Russia needs to be cultivated again, even if there are various difficulties in it. Now, how India is struggling, or how India is facing the oil crisis or the sanctions. So India has also started diversifying oil sourcing from other sources, other countries, and limited its oil supplies from Russia. But how much patience India can have in everyday changing policies based more on optics and clash of ego? This is a question which need to be probed, that how much patience India can show when everyday bullying is being faced by the American policies. And it is also true that Trump's focus on tariffs and earning money through tariffs is also a big failure because of trade surplus of China, which has crossed $1.08 trillion through November 25. And China has controlled the purchase of American soybeans and other products and selling more to US than buying from the US. And this, it has done very, very manipulatively by shifting its assembly line to goods to Southeast Asia, Mexico, and Africa, which ship finished products to US without tariffs. So China is earning all the benefits without paying any kind of taxes, any kind of tariffs, and that's why its trade surplus is increasing. So that's why I said that the actual beneficiary in this situation seems to be China, and which is least bothered about tariffs, but it has earned trust of all countries. How it earns the trust? By providing easy loans, by providing aid, by developing infrastructure in the countries where it is required, also by its technological technological advancement in chip making, semiconductors, military equipment, manufacturing, etc. So US weakness is why US feels weak, because Trump has underestimated China. So this underestimation of China is also not very favorable for US. And for taming Chinese aggression and boldness, US needs to completely make over its strategy and increase its outreach to India, which is another emerging global power, about which Tripathi ji and Kondapalli ji both spoke very emphatically. So I also feel that US needs a very good outreach to India for erasing all the doubts and also making India confident about the US interests. Now, if we talk about West Asia conflict, so India faces the challenge of safeguarding its interests and exploring new strategic opportunities and tactics. Although visit of Putin and Trump, they reflect a rapidly changing geopolitical scenario in which China often needs to do little, but its posturing alone shapes international movements and expectations. Actually, many world leaders have been calling on China and presenting their credentials to China and seeking favors from China. So China is on the seventh sky presently. Although China is also undergoing internal purging process within its armed forces, facing economic vulnerabilities linked to blockade of the Strait of Hormuz and Iran's control of shipping routes, but its influence continues to rise due to its technological excellence. China considers Taiwan as an internal matter of China, and that's why it has suggested a new way to deal with the problems, and it is constructive strategic stability and cooperation, limited competition, controllable differences with US to avoid conflict and identify opportunities for peace and cooperation, ensuring reopening of Hormuz for smooth maritime traffic for China's trade, energy supplies, and economic growth. China thinks that the US is a declining power. That's why China is calling shots. And China can travel anywhere without any problem because there is no power to stop China now. And interestingly, Trump is very receptive to Chinese concept of strategic stability, as he stopped the 14 billion worth of weapons supply to Taiwan after his visit from China. So this kind of things are also posing questions. And Trump also interestingly asked one more question, that whether it is feasible for the US to travel 9,500 miles to fight a war with China. It is not feasible for him. So China at presently appears to be holding upper hand and framing the strategic direction and discussions largely reflected Beijing's priorities. So this is why, because Trump went to China in the hope that China will put pressure on Iran to open the Strait of Hormuz and also to end the war with Iran, so that Trump can declare victory. You will see that Trump is unable to declare victory. Even its Secretary of Defense has already said that we have achieved all the goals. We have neutralized or flattened its Air Force, Navy, and we have considerable control on Iran. But still, there is no victory announcement from the US side. So what could be the reason of that? It also needs to be probed. And the framework of agreement is still with President Trump. And it is also reported that the hardliners in Iran are also opposing this kind of agreement. Now, a new weapon has been introduced in this weapon, and that is in this war, and this is a very interesting weapon, and it's an economic weapon. Economic weapon by choking the Strait of Hormuz, which connects the Arabian Sea and Gulf of Oman and shared by two countries, Iran and Oman. And now nobody is going to open the Hormuz Strait. Rather, US has also used this naval blockade to stop any kind of commercial traffic. So this is a double-edged war now, double-edged weapon and double-edged war, and the mines have been laid in this narrow strait. So this is also creating problem to all, because the world's 20% global petroleum flew through this corridor in 2024, but now countries like India, even China is also dependent on this kind of petroleum products. But this is also not opening, and it is also signaling that the war is not going to end very soon, despite ceasefire or no ceasefire. Iran has used three strategies. One is blockade of Hormuz for all commercial traffic. Second, that's a very soft target about which Tripathi ji also indicated. Bombing of pro-American Gulf countries. And third is to put pressure on the United States for freezing assets for $25 billion for stopping the war. So Iran is not going to take any kind of call unless these conditions are met. In India, Marco Rubio declared very proudly that Iran can never have nuclear weapons. And Iran will have to open the Strait of Hormuz for any kind of negotiations. But Iran is not ready, neither ready for opening of the Strait of Hormuz, and also not giving up its nuclear weapons and not giving up its enriched uranium. So the deadlock is prevailing, and the blockade is still continued, and the world is facing the impact of oil crisis. Now, Trump is leading the world towards unexplained chaos, claims and counterclaims, falsehoods, disorder, uncertainty, anxiety, and insecurity, besides exposing game of personal ego. Trump is very egoistic, and that's why he also holds the authoritarian tendencies and bombastic attitude. That's why one day he'll declare that, okay, the war is going to over. We are sending back the Iranians to the Stone Age, but they have not gone to the Stone Age. They are still very much present, and they are fighting war with America. So although there is a so-called ceasefire, but still war is going on, and this ceasefire is being mediated. This ceasefire and the peace talks are being mediated by Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, UAE, and other countries, but nothing is happening. China's role is very interesting in this war, because China is not coming directly in front of everything, but China is doing it from the back channel and supporting Pakistan's mediation efforts. Because without China's agreement, Pakistan will not do anything which is not suitable to China. So the Operation Epic Fury started with very much fanfare and with tam-jam, but now it has not gained anything. It's only fury and fire and nothing else. And then the theory of Operation Madman was also applied by Iran to fight the madness of this war by any kind of tools. And this was the tool that Trump's request of taking back the Iranian country to its people was not received by any person, because now there was a cause of war, and the cause of war was that an unwanted superpower wanted to control Iran. So due to their nationalism, they never supported Trump's call, but they supported their regime, although it's very repressive regime, but they supported it. And regime change is nowhere seen, because after the death of their supreme leader, his son has taken over very smoothly. So there was nothing which can be done. So despite 5 weeks of Operation Epic Fury and almost 7 weeks of ceasefire, there are no signs of US victory over Iran or halting war or regime change. So why and what is leading this war? What is the purpose of this war? And although everyone is claiming that we are winning the war, but where are the signs of winning the war? There are no signs. And through Project Freedom also, Trump could not achieve much. Now, what are the options? There are several options which have been forwarded by different leaders to travel into this uncertain world order and to counter the Trump's very repressive policies. Like French president wanted anti-coercion instrument, bazooka. Canadian Prime Minister, I already told that he said that the middle powers should come together and they should try to do something which is important, because the next target could be the middle powers only. And most European countries are also looking for trade diversification. China and Canada are moving towards an era of cooperation by their strategic partnerships. So this is the impossible things have been made possible by the American conduct and American policies only. And this is also indication of, like Tripathi ji was talking about the multilateral treaties. So you must be knowing that Trump has already withdrawn from 60 multilateral international pacts like climate change, energy transition, medical care, promoting democracy and fair trade practices. So this is a very big blow to multilateralism supported by India. Trump has also proposed a board of peace. But this board of peace, recently I read that it has no money. So without money and without peace, what this board is going to do, in which Trump has named himself as a lifelong president of this board. And interestingly, Trump has also proposed one more idea which is not very conducive for the states of Middle East, that he has called all the Middle Eastern countries, including Saudi Arabia and Qatar and Iran, even Iran. The regime he wants to change, or he wants to send them to the Stone Age. He has recognized them as Islamic Republic of Iran, and he has asked them to join Abrahamic Accords. And this is a very because he wants to do it as a peace deal. But this is a very negative idea, because the countries like Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and all other countries will not embrace Israel. Pakistan will also not do it. So this is also not a good idea. And I think these are the things which are also making this deal difficult, and peace is not being restored. So as both the eminent personalities said, that India has options, but options are limited. So therefore, the agreement of investment with UAE, other Middle Eastern and European countries through FTA is a good strategy to secure autonomy and sovereignty. It's difficult and challenging for Indian diplomacy, but India's quiet moves and diversification of trade agreements is very good. India's policy has 3 fundamental principles in West Asia, that are to use dialogue and diplomacy for peace, reducing tensions, security of Indians residing in West Asia, and to protect India's national interest of energy and commercial trade lines, while global powers like China and Russia are just interested to secure their interest. India is also bound by its relational interest with Israel and US, strategic interests with countries of Gulf. Therefore, middle path of Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar as India way seems precise at this moment. If India has to act as a security provider in IOR, it needs to work more towards enhancing connecting role with South Asia and Southeast Asian countries. Sagar project launched in 2015 for immediate IOR and Mahasagar in 24-25 for broader Indo-Pacific and Global South are India's maritime doctrines for security, economic cooperation, and growth of blue economy, and inclusive strategic partnerships across Indo-Pacific. Rail connectivity from Kanyakumari to Kashmir, anti-terror treaties with UAE, and support of Central Asian countries to jointly combat terrorism and development of Iran's Chabahar port are good steps. India needs to cultivate good friendly relations with its immediate neighbors, make SAFTA, South Asia Free Trade Agreements with New Zealand, US, European Union, Oman, Peru, Qatar, and Sri Lanka for tariff reduction in manufacturing, agriculture services, data localization, intellectual property rights, and investment promotion. FTA finalized on May 6, 2025 between India and Britain, between India and Eurasian Economic Union, IMEC, and relations with Nordic countries, agreement for clean energy, Asian-Indian trade area needs to be made fully functional. Shift towards regional supply chains due to geopolitical changes to ensure alignment with global trade dynamics is also required. Actually, there is a requirement of carefulness, caution, preparedness, border area development by infrastructure, which India is doing in some areas by the scheme of Vibrant Village, or constructing homestays. Healthy relations with neighbors, smart and reliable alliances are key to success. Over-reliance on China or any other power like US will be a mistake, as they have the ability to change the game anytime. Possibility of new alliances and new FTAs need to be probed and also to be implemented. With this, I stop because I think I have spoken considerably at length. And if there are any questions and answers, and I'll be happy to answer those. And I'm really thankful to everyone that they had the patience to bear with me. And I'm really thankful to Prakash Mani Tripathi ji, Kondapalli ji, Saroj Kumar Verma ji, and all others who are still present, and I can see them on the screen. So my thanks again to the Indian Research Scholars Association, to Prakash Mani Tripathi ji, Kondapalli ji, and Saroj Kumar Verma ji, and all others for keeping me happy by their presence and not leaving the screen. So my regards to everyone, and thanks to Vikas Kumar for taking this initiative. He has been asking me to do it for a long time, but due to some reason or other, I couldn't do it. So I hope I did justice with the topic, because I myself proposed the topic, and I'm still I'm still trying to understand the intricacies of the changing world order. So maybe there could be not much coherence in my thoughts. It is possible because it is still unfolding. So the things which are unfolding, you cannot predict. And when you have an unpredictable president like Trump, who says one thing one day, the other thing other day, so the things keep on changing. So anyways, thank you very much for your patience, and I am honored by your patience. Thank you. Thanks, and my best wishes to everyone.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for such a comprehensive analysis on today's topic. So moving on, I would like to welcome Professor Shrikant Kondapalli for the...
Manorama ji, you can
Yes.
invite some participant, one or two, for the question answer. And,
for Q&A.
yes, and
Yeah, they can ask questions.
Okay.
to any
And
one of
open the
us.
floor for question and
If any
answers.
participant
Pati
have
ji,
them,
Shrikant ji,
yes.
to me, they can ask to Saroj
Okay,
Verma ji,
sure,
they can
sure,
ask
sure.
any questions.
Okay, so the floor is open for the question and answers. So if you have any questions, please shoot.
Don't shoot.
Either raise your hand,
Don't
write your
shoot.
question in your chat
Shooting
box,
is
or just...
not good.
Sorry?
Shooting is not good. Don't shoot.
Okay. So you can come up with your questions, and you'll get your answers here.
Okay. Yes. Yes. Okay. Yes. Professor Raj,
Raj
madam.
is
Yes.
raised.
You can ask. Yes.
Hello.
Yes. Yes, madam. Please.
Yeah. Ma'am, Professor, ma'am, your lecture was extremely nice. I have my phone is not so good, so and my headphone is also not working, so I'm not able to, speak properly. But somehow that's why I just kept my camera off and I was here. I was listening. Your lecture was extremely comprehensive, and you discussed about all sorts of uncertainties very nicely, and the intricacies were very good. Somehow what I feel, it's not a question. Okay, fine, let me introduce myself. I am Raj. I'm from SIS, School of International Studies, and of Kondapalli sir, from Center for Russian Central Studies. And we keep dealing with all these, what is happening in international arena, almost 24 hours. So, what I feel is that no doubt about that, we are undergoing very uncertain time and scenario. But nonetheless, what I feel is that it is a kind of litmus test for our government and for India to be actual, to be Atmanirbhar, in real practical sense. Because we are facing energy security, we are facing not only energy security, we are also facing as we know that anytime any country, the war or the scenario somehow related to war has been coming up or propping up. So it will be very important for India as such to look at its security from energy point of view and also from defense point of view, both externally and of course so far as internal condition is concerned. Yes, what I feel is from people that the prices of energy, the prices of petrol, crude oil, hydrocarbons are all increasing. So it is very important that we look at both policies that can help us in making us secured from energy point of view, and of course from defense perspective. Yes, thank you so much.
So we need not to give any answer for this. It's understood.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you for your
Okay,
observation.
thank you. And
Very
I
nice.
think if any scholars want to ask question, और चूंकि ये सेंट्रल जोन बिंग का कार्यक्रम है और इसमें जो मोस्ट ऑफ दी स्कॉलर्स हैं वो हिंदी रीजन से हैं, तो आप लोग हिंदी में भी पूछ सकते हैं। और मैडम
हाँ, जरूर पूछ सकते हैं, मैं तो हिंदी बोलती हूँ बहुत।
यस
आराम से पूछिए।
यस
श्रीकांत जी की हिंदी भी बहुत अच्छी है।
यस मैडम, सर से तो मैं हिंदी में
और मैंने हिंदी में बोलते हुए सुना।
त्रिपाठी जी तो बहुत अच्छा बोलते हैं हिंदी में, तो उनके बराबर विद्वान नहीं कोई।
नहीं, आप
जी भी बहुत अच्छी हिंदी बोलते हैं।
श्रीकांत जी बहुत अच्छा बोले और आप तो इस विषय में पारंगत है, तो आपका कहना है कि अद्भुत।
क्योंकि
मैम मैं श्लेषा सचेंद्र हूँ, बिहार यूनिवर्सिटी में मैं संस्कृत की लेक्चरर हूँ। और अभी सर ने भी कहा और आपने भी कहा कि मल्टीपोलरिटी जो है वर्ल्ड जो है सक्सेस नहीं हो रहा है, तो हमें सेल्फ रिलायंस की तरफ बढ़ना चाहिए, आत्मनिर्भर भारत बनाना चाहिए। मेरा क्वेश्चन ये है कि बाय द नेम ऑफ आत्मनिर्भर भारत, क्या हम सारे एंशिएंट टेक्नोलॉजी और जो संस्कृत की जो भी विधाएं हैं जिसको हमारी सरकार इतने मतलब तन्मयता से उसको रिवाइव करने की कोशिश कर रही है, एज इट इज इम्पोज कर देना क्या उसको आत्मनिर्भर भारत बना देगा आज के सिनेरियो में, कि उसको अकॉर्डिंग टू सिचुएशन हमें डेवलप करना पड़ेगा?
देखिए, अगर आप मुझसे पूछिए तो मेरा तो एक लाइन का आंसर ये होगा कि आत्मनिर्भरता जरूरी है, लेकिन जैसे मैंने शुरू में बोला था कि नेशनल इंटरेस्ट जो है वो सिचुएशनल भी होते हैं, सिचुएशन के हिसाब से बदलते भी हैं। वो नेशनल इंटरेस्ट परमानेंट भी होते हैं, लेकिन वो कुछ नेशनल इंटरेस्ट ऐसे होते हैं जो अकॉर्डिंग टू सर्कमस्टांसेस बदलते हैं, तो उस हिसाब से हमें बदलना पड़ेगा। जैसे जो अब हो रहा है वो पहले नहीं हुआ था। तो आपका जो कहना है कि जो आप संस्कृत पढ़ाते हैं या पढ़ते हैं उसमें जो कुछ भी लिखा है, ये तो मैं नहीं कह सकती कि बिना एक्सपेरिमेंट करे उनको सत्य साबित किया जा सकता है। एक्सपेरिमेंट तो करना पड़ेगा, एक्सपेरिमेंट तो जरूर करने पड़ेंगे, लेकिन उनसे लीड ली जा सकती है, उनको उन पे अच्छी रिसर्च की जा सकती है। रिसर्च करके उसका आउटपुट निकाला जा सकता है कि कितना जो संस्कृत में लिखा गया है वो सत्य के कितना करीब है। ये तो हम लोगों का काम है, स्कॉलर्स का काम है, आप जैसे रिसर्च स्कॉलर्स का काम है जो इस सत्य को लोगों के सामने लाएं। तो वो आपको करना पड़ेगा।
यही बात मैं भी हमेशा बच्चों को, जो भी मैं जानती हूँ, कि अकॉर्डिंग टू सिचुएशन हमें डेवलप करना पड़ेगा। जैसे कि इलेक्ट्रिसिटी का हुआ, डेवलपमेंट किया गया, तो पहले
देखिए इसमें अभी जैसे जो हम लोग ग्रीन टेक्नोलॉजी के फील्ड में, यानी ऑल्टरनेटिव एनर्जी रिसोर्सेज के फील्ड में, मैं चूंकि इंडियन हिमालयन रीजन में हूँ इसलिए मैं कह सकती हूँ कि इंडियन हिमालयन रीजन सेल्फ सफिशिएंट हो चुका है। सोलर एनर्जी का भरपूर उपयोग हो चुका है, यहाँ पे हर घर में है, और ये काफी सक्सेसफुल हुआ है। और अभी जैसे जो इंडिया और जो नॉर्डिक कंट्रीज के बीच में या नीदरलैंड्स के बीच में जो समझौते हुए, उसमें ग्रीन टेक्नोलॉजी पे बहुत फोकस दिया गया था। तो ग्रीन टेक्नोलॉजी वही है, ऑल्टरनेटिव सोर्स ऑफ एनर्जी। हालांकि मैं ये नहीं कह रही कि ऑयल को कोई रिप्लेस कर देगा, ऑयल तो रिप्लेस नहीं हो सकता, लेकिन अगर हमारी डिपेंडेंस जैसे अभी इधर की कभी हो गई है, तो डिपेंडेंस थोड़ी कम हो सकती है अगर हम इन ऑल्टरनेटिव सोर्सेज ऑफ एनर्जी पे अच्छी तरीके से काम करें, तो डिपेंडेंस काफ़ी कम हो सकती है। तो उसके लिए तरह तरह की चीज़ें और तरह तरह के प्रयोग करने की ज़रूरत है, और उसको परखना बहुत ज़रूरी है। जैसे सोलर एनर्जी तो परख ली हमने, जैसे लद्दाख तो फुली सोलर है, आपको पता ही होगा। ऐसे ही हिमालयन रीजन के जितने भी स्टेट्स हैं वो सब इस एनर्जी से भरपूर है। सौर ऊर्जा, हर घर में सूर्य घर योजना लागू है, जो सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट की स्कीम है, और सब लोग सब्सिडी का फायदा उठा रहे हैं। तो ये आपको अवेयर भी होना पड़ेगा कि कौन सी स्कीम्स चल रही हैं, उनका फायदा कैसे उठाया जा सकता है, और उनसे आप किस तरीके से अपनी समस्याओं का समाधान कर सकते हैं। ये भी हो सकता है। त्रिपाठी जी भी कुछ कह रहे हैं।
अपने पास थोरियम रिजर्व बहुत ज्यादा है,
हाँ,
तो उसको हमने एक्सप्लॉइट किया ही नहीं है, तो हमारे पास एनर्जी सेक्टर में आत्मनिर्भर होने की संभावना बहुत
है।
वन मोर क्वेश्चन,
पूछने दीजिए, एक क्वेश्चन और पूछने दीजिए, कोई बात नहीं, पूछिए, आप पूछिए।
मुझे ये कहना है मैम, जब हमें रिसर्चर करना है अपने टेक्नोलॉजी के ऊपर, तो बाय द नेम ऑफ डेवलपमेंट ब्लाइंडली हम जो इंपोर्ट कर रहे हैं फॉरेन टेक्नोलॉजी को, और अभी मैंने पढ़ा है जो भी कि एआई जो होता है, फ्रेश वाटर उसको मतलब नीड होनी चाहिए होती है अपने आप को रिचार्ज करने के लिए। अगर हम ब्लाइंडली इस तरह, सरकार भी आई, जैसे मैं संस्कृत बैकग्राउंड की हूँ, और हमें भी एआई के लिए इम्पोज किया जाता है कि यू हैव टू नो टू एजुकेट योर स्टूडेंट। तो मैम, अगर फ्रेश वाटर क्राइसिस, ऑलरेडी हम लोग इतने सारे क्राइसिस में हैं, और इवन दो कि हमारे यहाँ पानी की कोई भी कमी नहीं है, फिर भी बहुत सारे एरिया में, मैं बिहार की रिमोट एरिया की बात कर रही हूँ, जहाँ वाटर, फ्रेश वाटर नॉट अवेलेबल, कभी कहीं आयरन का है, कहीं पारा का वो है। तो अगर हम एआई को इम्पोज करेंगे आज के सिनेरियो में, तो फिर हमारे पास फ्रेश वाटर क्राइसिस नहीं हो जाएगी जिस तरह आज हमारे पास एनर्जी क्राइसिस है। लास्ट क्वेश्चन,
देखिए एआई तो ह्यूमन को रिप्लेस तो नहीं कर सकता ना। ह्यूमन इंटेलिजेंस को, एआई को बनाया किसने? ह्यूमन ने तो बनाया है। तो ह्यूमन इंटेलिजेंस को रिप्लेस कैसे करेगा? रिप्लेस तो तब उन सेक्टर्स में कर सकता है जहां पर कि बिल्कुल टेक्निकल चीजें हैं, लेकिन आपकी रिसर्च को वो रिप्लेस नहीं कर सकता। वो लिख सकता है, अगर आप चीटिंग करें तो एआई के थ्रू लिख सकता है रिसर्च, पूरा आपका मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट रेडी हो जाएगा, लेकिन वो आप होने नहीं देंगे। तो जब आप अपना दिमाग इस्तेमाल करेंगे तो एआई का दिमाग कहाँ से इस्तेमाल होगा?
एआई की एक सबसे बड़ी कमी है उसमें संवेदना नहीं है,
नहीं है।
तो ह्यूमन बीइंग्स में ही है। और जो नेचुरल इंटेलिजेंस है उसके सामने आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस कुछ नहीं है।
और इसीलिए ह्यूमैनिटीज एंड सोशल साइंस में एआई का इम्पैक्ट कम होगा
जी
बजाय कि साइंस के
Science.
सब्जेक्ट्स में।
जी जी
Okay. Thank you.
थैंक यू मैम।
I think many participants have question, but sorry, we have a excellent chair. So I would like to invite Professor Srikant sir for the presidential remark, and after this we will end the session.
Dhanyawad, Vikas ji. I think we have had a very good session exploring the international and regional orders. Professor Nautiyal mentioned about the international order and also came back to the West Asia, South Asia, Southeast Asia in her remarks on the regional orders and how there is the impact of the changing world order on the regional orders. So it has been a good day for us in reflecting on the emerging world order and the intricacies of these. There is also the mention about the impact on India and what the options that India can explore further, and her suggestion that the Indian Research Scholars Association further need to do some research, provide policy options to the powers that be, and also to the civil society. It cannot be done by just the government, but also by the other stakeholders in the system. So I see that there are so many participants from different countries. So from that point of view, I hope the discussion has also been very pointed, relevant for these countries as well. We are all in the same boat of globalization, and we also face similar challenges, and especially with the global South countries. So our policy options should also be global in nature, so that everyone can learn from each other how to address these cataclysmic developments that are unfolding in recent times. I think it was a good session. Let me congratulate the organizers for this treat.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, please, Manorama, please.
Thank you so much, sir, for your valuable reflections on today's session. So moving on, at the end, I would like to invite Shraddha Sharma. She's a scholar from University of Delhi for vote of thanks. Over to you, Miss Shraddha.
थैंक यू सभी को नमस्ते। इस सत्र के लिए बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद विकास जी, आपका आपने इतना अच्छा सत्र आयोजित किया। मैं प्रोफेसर श्री प्रकाश मणि जी का, श्रीकांत जी का और प्रोफेसर अन्नपूर्णा जी का धन्यवाद देती हूँ। ये सत्र वास्तविक में सत्ता के बदलते केंद्र और संगठनों की बदलती भूमिका के विषय में हमें बहुत कुछ सिखाया, और इसी बीच संघर्ष के समय में भारत किस प्रकार अपनी ऊर्जा के प्रति, अपनी अर्थव्यवस्था के प्रति सतर्क रहे, क्योंकि ऐसी स्थिति में भारत स्वयं की सहायता सर्वप्रथम करे, उसके बारे में भी हमें जानने को मिला। और इसी के साथ साथ भविष्य में नीति निर्माण और शोध के लिए आप सभी विद्वत गणों ने हम विद्यार्थियों को प्रेरित किया। मैं आप सभी का धन्यवाद देती हूँ। थैंक यू सो मच।
थैंक यू।
प्रणाम।
Thank you.
Srikant sir, thank you to all. And thank you Salamat madam, and all I think Professor Nasrullah has joined from Bangladesh, and Salamat madam has joined from I think South Africa, and Sange and other professors. So in next session sure we will give 15 minutes, I think 20 minutes for the question answer. So thank you. Thank you. Bye bye.